Welcome everyone to the Lofi Poli Sci podcast. I'm your host Michael Pickering. That's right, Lo-Fi as in low fidelity, low quality, in your face, messy as can be global news show. Here we're going to talk about that famous question: what's going on in the world today? We'll be covering 5 headlines from across the globe and then choose one to go into a more detailed analysis. For our third story today, we'll be focusing on the country of Greece with that lo-fi style country profile. But first, the news fresh off the press. Source: BBC News, Asia section. China-India border, why tensions are rising between the neighbors. This dispute is in part of the well-known area of Kashmir, which traditionally, when Westerners hear this name, they think India and Pakistan. However, the region and geopolitics are far more complicated. This particular area of Kashmir is claimed by India and China. Pakistan has little or nothing to do with it. The implications. This is by no means a new issue between the countries. We tend to think that the world's borders are mostly set in stone and well drawn. However, this is not at all the case. Whether it's the South China Sea, Kashmir, Crimea, East Ukraine, the West Bank, or anywhere else in the world, countries want as much territory as possible. You see, Lo-Fi Nation, land is power. It's potential resources. It's more space for people to live and further populate. Land, generally speaking, is a hot commodity not being made anymore. And don't say Hawaii and volcanoes, or Singapore and the UAE making islands. I know. But for these, they are few exceptions, and it's a lot of investment and money and time with very little gain. The point is, generally speaking, if you want to increase your power as a country and gain more land, you have to take it by force from someone else. Although this conflict is not new, it's something worth looking out for in the future. Will China flex its superior military muscle? Will the standoff continue? Or will a diplomatic solution present itself? It's hard to say, but as current global conditions improve, so too will business as usual with countries trying to increase their own level of power in the world. Next up, source: Washington Post, business section. Vatican centralizes contracting to cut waste, corruption. This story is incredibly difficult to tackle from a poli-sci perspective. We assume all countries have some level of corruption regardless of government structure. That being said, there is no listing of Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index for the Vatican. There is no Freedom House score for the level of democracy for the Vatican. There is no Reporters Without Borders score for media freedom to even know how free and independent Vatican media are from government. What's more, there is no World Bank GDP per capita listing for the Vatican, and even the CIA World Factbook lists this indicator's value as N/A. In short, from a comparative politics perspective, I have no credible data to go off on to make inferences about the levels of anything in the Vatican. The implications. What we can say for sure is that the country is one of the few city-state countries left in the world, and one of the oldest as well. It's not surprising to find corruption in any government, and it's a good thing for any government to attempt to deal with that corruption and the misuse of government revenue. The Vatican is no exception when it comes to having to deal with current global conditions, and its revenue stream has been hit hard since tourism is such an important component of it. Theoretically, at least, because we don't have that data. This story illustrates that all countries in the world, no matter size nor regime type, have to find ways to increase economic performance moving forward, to recover from global recessions, and pursue ways of efficiently managing their budget. We'll be interested to see how the Vatican does exactly this in the future. And now it's time for our country profile of the day on Greece. Geography lesson, Lo-Fi Nation. Greece is bordered to the north by Albania, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria, to the east by Turkey, to the east-southeast by the Aegean Sea, to the south by the Mediterranean Sea, and the west by the Ionian Sea. Greece is considered the founder of Western democracy, dating back over 2,000 years. But for our purposes, Greece went through a military dictatorship from 1967 to 1974, so only recently becoming the democratic country that we know them as today, in 1974. The World Bank recorded GDP per capita in 2018 was just over $20,300 a year, up from $18,800 in 2017. Freedom House, covering civil liberties and civil rights around the world, gives Greece in 2019 an 87, up from an 85 in 2018. Reporters Without Borders, ranking 180 countries and territories across the globe via media freedoms, in 2019 ranked the country as 65 out of 180 countries, up from 74th in 2018. Transparency International, with its rankings of 198 countries and territories across the globe via their Corruption Perception Index, ranks Greece at number 60 of 198, up 7 places from the year before. In short, Greece is improving on all fronts via these measures. Now, what's been happening in Greece lately? Since 2008, Greece has been hit hard by economic recession, implementing EU-requested austerity measures to receive EU bailouts, cutting social spending, dealing with protest and civil unrest, government worker strikes. But things have been improving slowly for Greece. Another major development is the long-running standoff between Greece and Macedonia over EU membership for Macedonia and the name of the country. Yes, it was an argument over a name. You see, most people know Greece for Alexander the Great of Macedonia. Greece is hardcore proud of this history and never liked Macedonia taking the name for their country. So, Greece refused to let them join the EU. However, in 2018-2019, a compromise was made. They just called the country North Macedonia, and everyone was happy. Well, not really, but it worked for what it's worth. Greece is likely to continue growing economically and increase its ties to the EU, which we have seen issues, though, lately of border crossings with refugees from the Syrian civil war. But for the moment, this issue is on hold. But we'll be keeping an eye out to see if and when this issue comes back and how Greece will deal with it moving forward. And now it's time for our Headline in the Spotlight segment. Source: Reuters World News. Hong Kong passes China National Anthem Bill amid protest by democracy lawmakers. That's right. Now school children will learn the national anthem of China, and anyone disrespecting that song could face up to 3 years in prison and or a fine of over $6,000. This bill is separate from the national security bill that we've been covering. The contents of that bill, we are still waiting to see how it plays out. The implications. Well, the passing of this bill implies that despite international condemnation, despite domestic Hong Kong protest, despite pro-democracy lawmakers' objections, that China is going forward with making Hong Kong more like Beijing. This implies that Hong Kong will continually lose more and more of its freedoms, its autonomy, and will become more like mainland China. It means that foreigners looking to visit, to go to school, or to open up businesses in Hong Kong will now reconsider it and weigh doing so just like they weigh doing these things in mainland China. The implications. Lo-Fi Nation, listen close, because this all means that sometimes, no matter the battle or preference, sometimes your side in politics loses. It's a hard pill to swallow, I know, and I'm sure the people of Hong Kong are feeling this in a very real way, that our discussing it simply doesn't do justice. Stay strong, Hong Kong. Lofi Poli Sci is still with you, and still watching. And a last piece of news from the AP News Oddities section, because I refuse to leave you with a doom and gloom story. We all deserve a bit of uplifting before we go about our day. It may not be sunshine and rainbows every day, but this story, well, you'll see. The headline: Police: Man faked woman's disappearance so she avoided prison. What's this? A bit of Houdini's disappearing act? A bit of sleight of hand and mischief? Oh, if only. The couple in West Virginia faked her falling over a cliff, so to speak. The husband and son planted some of her items at the bottom, where she supposedly fell to her death. For days, authorities searched for her missing body, as her family faked depression and sadness for the loss of a wife and mother. But alas, the authorities found her in quite good health, hiding. Well, let me ask you, Lo-Fi Nation. Multiple choice question. Where was the mother hiding? A. In a bunker. B. In a safe house several countries over. C. Right over the border in Canada. D. In a closet at the couple's home. And in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you said in a closet at the couple's home, you are correct and apparently smart enough to see through these people's disappearing magic trick. The implications. People, stop watching Ocean's 11 and thinking, well, I could do that. No other implications needed. And that's a brief snapshot of what's going on in the world today. Always remember that Lofi Poli Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Please write in with your questions, comments, or requests of countries for our new segments, or a top 10 global list you want to see, to lofi-polisci@planetmail.com. That's lofi, L-O-F-I, poly, P-O-L-I, sci, S-C-I, @planetmail.com. Let me say thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, wash those hands, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Lofi Poli Sci podcast. Pickering,